Now, we are going to maintain the multi-level and multilateral approach to the energy transition in our final presentation today. I quote, "Energy infrastructure security is not only a matter of national defense or economic stability, it is also an environmental governance issue," states Charles Arden-Clark, Senior Advisor to the United Nations Science Policy Business Forum on the Environment, the UNSPBF, to be precise. Mr. Arden-Clark, he is an international expert on environmental sustainability, international environmental governance, and sustainable consumption and production, with more than 3 decades of leadership in multilateral environmental policy and United Nations negotiations. Today, he is here to speak on behalf of the Executive Secretary of the UNSPBF, Shireen Zorba, who was unable to travel from Kenya to Norway due to the war in the Middle East. Now, we are pleased to have Charles Arden-Clark here with us today, safe and sound. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Trondheim, one of my favorite countries, Norway. I'm here for Shireen, so forgive me if I don't get this completely right. She's done a lot of the work behind this speech, but I have to say she also gave me the opportunity to come to this extraordinary conference, which has left me deeply impressed by not just the degree of organization, but the people you managed to assemble in the room, and the multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder conversation we've had. I think these kind of events, it's not just the technologies, as the last speaker said. This is the kind of analysis that we're going to need to dig us out of the challenges we face. And so I would very much like to extend my congratulations to NTNU for having put this all together. And, I'll make a short pitch for myself. I'd love to come to the next one if there's anything for me to do. So, onto the speech. This forum has contributed to one of the defining challenges of our time: how to transform the world's energy assistance whilst sustaining economic prosperity, social stability, and environmental integrity. The energy transition is currently unfolding in an age of geopolitical turbulence in very real and very short time. A military strike last week on Karg Island, which is Iran's principal export hub, sent a massive shock through global markets. And of course, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, which is only compounding that. This is a very stark reminder that despite the rapid growth in renewables and electrification, for the current time being, the global economy remains structurally exposed to a very limited number of hydrocarbon choke points. The economy transition is increasingly a question of resilience, a word you've heard a lot, and reducing the structural exposure to the energy system, whose vulnerabilities are geopolitical, environmental, as much as economic. Energy underpins our whole economy: industrial production, trade, food systems, fiscal stability, you name it. When it fractures, as we've seen, very much in the past few weeks, the shock propagates through inflation, disrupted supply chains, political risk, and indeed a risk of even more heightened conflict. The transition requires changing energy sources, wasting less of it, and designing systems that require less input to deliver higher productivity and less pollution, and particularly climate pollution that contributes to climate change. This is the essence of energy efficiency, which is frankly a term I haven't heard enough in this conference, and seems to be a seriously forgotten element in the energy transformation we need. The transition also will require a fundamental redesign of energy, industrial, and financial systems, which will require strong political will, coherent, coordinated policies, innovative financing underpinned by very robust and at times innovative multilateral cooperation, which is at serious risk at present. Excuse me. Structural inequalities have also long constrained progress, particularly in the global south, where, as we've heard, financing costs remain significantly higher and access to infrastructure is much more limited. Those disparities are actually not narrowing, they're deepening. And at the same time, geopolitical instability and fracturing multilateralism are compounding that challenge. War is also redirecting energy systems towards immediate military demand and displacing the vital priority of efficiency. The erosion of trust in multilateral cooperation is weakening coordination and collective action. And the rollback of environmental policies in some jurisdictions and perhaps at the international level is undermining regulatory drivers of efficiency. At the same time, rapidly rising energy demand from AI and data infrastructure is placing additional strain on our energy systems. And there is an accelerating race to control strategic resources, not just oil and gas, but also the critical minerals and rare earths that will be central to the energy transition that we need. And those scarcities, or shall we say those competitions, are also compounding geopolitical tensions and environmental pressures. We also have energy infrastructure located in fragile ecosystems, which when disrupted has consequences that extend way beyond markets, such as, for example, the Nord Stream explosions, which triggered one of the largest recorded methane releases from infrastructure failure. So, the energy transition, which was once framed primarily as the climate mitigation pathway, is increasingly being treated by governments as a strategic systems transformation, and a necessary one. A redesign of energy, industrial, technological, and security infrastructures simultaneously. We need to shift towards more security of sources, supply chain resilience, and industrial competitiveness, but built on lower emissions. The need for critical minerals and rare earths are converting the transition into a strategic dependency question as well. And what were oil choke points in the 20th century energy system, it may be that mineral sources and their refining hubs become those of the 21st century energy system. Rare earths also illustrate the strategic tension because they sit at the intersection of clean energy deployment, industrial policy, and defense capability. The same materials underpin defense system. And this dual use means that the energy transition supply chains are now inseparable from national security calculations. There are trade tensions too. Export controls are becoming routine geopolitical instruments rather than exceptional trade tools. Mining expansion is intensifying pressure on biodiversity, water resources, and indigenous lands as we seek those rare earths and minerals. And in some sense, the energy transition also risks reproducing some of the extractive injustices of the fossil fuel area if we don't get the governance right. Achieving more circularity is therefore both a strategic and an environmental priority, as I think you've been beginning to hear in the presentations today. Expanded recycling and material efficiency could reduce the need for new mining investment by roughly 30% by 2040, according to the IEA. The emerging policy challenge is therefore not simply to accelerate mineral supply, but to govern extraction, processing, recycling, and trade in ways that main the stock of these rare earths to underpin more sustainable and equitable development. Current geopolitical chaos has exposed energy infrastructure, shipping routes and supply chains as strategic vulnerabilities. So governments must now reconfigure their approach to renewable energy, electrification and efficiency, not only as climate solutions, but also as instruments for strategic autonomy, national security and long-term resistance. This strengthens the political case for renewable energy deployment, grid expansion and efficiency improvements because these reduce exposure to volatile fuel imports and geopolitical shocks. Yet it also intensifies competition over the industrial and mineral foundations of the transition. The strategic implications of all this are complex and far-reaching. Policymakers must confront three interlinked challenges, and this is probably the key part of this presentation. A rapid transition without a supply chain strategy creates new security risks. A supply chain strategy without environmental governance undermines legitimacy, justice, and intergenerational equity. And a durable transition must reconcile the three imperatives simultaneously of strategic resilience, ecological stewardship, and equitable development. In this age of geopolitical fracture, the energy transition is no longer merely an environmental and climate agenda. It is becoming the organizing principle for economic security, industrial strategy, and international stability. If governed wisely, this transition can reduce vulnerability, restore balance with the natural world, and open new pathways for cooperation even in times of conflict. If governed poorly, the transition risks deepening rivalries and reproducing the very injustices and much of the damage that we have seen before. The responsibility for us is to shape the energy transition so that it does result in resilience, sustainability, and equity advancing together. In the end, this transition is not only about how we power our economies, it is about how we choose to power the future of our civilization. Thank you.